Hey, Barrie.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Ok.
Yeah, oh good. Good.
Bueno, además de tu evidente destreza para hacer frases, es superlativo tu rendimiento como guitarrista rítmico, el uso de tu mano derecha. ¿Cómo fuiste entrenando eso? ¿Le prestaste especial atención a cómo hacer más fluido el ritmo?
It's hard to know in some ways, how you end up where you are, but I think it's a combination of things. I was always inspired by rhythms as much as melody, always from the beginning. And I've always been really inspired by drums and drummers as well as guitar players. And quite a few of my favorite guitar players had a strong element of rhythm in their playing, I suppose. For example, my first guitar hero made me want to learn to play was John Squire from the Stone Roses. And he had a beautiful sense of rhythm and quite a melodic flow, but a great sense of time. And also other early influences, me like Johnny Marr, had a great sense of rhythm. And these are guys who had a swing and they had a groove. I like music that's more rigid as well, like sort of punkier things and stuff, but it's always things that had a kind of groove, even if it is quite tight metronomic sort of music, has always appealed to me. So I suppose John Squire, Jimi Hendrix is a big one, because when you see the way he was playing, that kind of loose flow to his playing, but the power he had with it. And then also people like Jimmy Nolan, who played with James Brown, R&B players, Steve Cropper, Canel Dupree, Leo Nocentelli from the Meters, strong rhythmical guitar players, but also people like Keith Richards or Pete Townsend, who could really drive it in more of a rocking sense as well. So I guess it's a mixture of things. And when you start to learn, you try to learn by trying to copy your heroes, and sometimes you cannot do it, but it means you discover something else. And I think over time it develops maybe into more your own style, possibly.
Relacionado a esto, tenés una técnica en la mano derecha que usás como tus 3 dedos, los que no tienen la púa, y golpeás las cuerdas. ¿Cómo desarrollaste esa técnica? ¿Se la viste a otro o es tuya?
I think I sort of developed it by accident, really. Although there are lots of guitar players who used a combination of pick and fingers. Maybe people like James Burton did, I think, and people like that possibly. Some country players, some rockabilly players. But I think I got the idea just because I don't really know how it started, but I also like people like Wilco Johnson, Dr. Feelgood. He didn't use a pick at all, but he used his fingers a lot. But I didn't discover him until later. I just started to use my fingers for some things because it's a different sound. Your fingers make a different sound to a plastic guitar pick, So it feels like you have a bigger sonic sort of palette if you use both. And that's my idea. You can use your finger or your thumb for certain things. It's a softer sound, and the pick is a harder attack, So I think I felt like I could helps you create a bit like the sound of two different guitars possibly at the same time, maybe.
Yeah, it makes sense. I saw Mark Ribot a couple of weeks ago,
yeah.
And he did a lot of that, and it sounds almost like two musicians at once, right? Because he did a lot of rhythm with the pick, and then he would do a melody with the fingers, and it opens up super nicely.
Yeah, it can give you more contrast between maybe a chord and maybe single notes or something, and create, because with my own band, I'm the only guitar player, so it's good to try and create different dynamics on your own, and I felt like that helped, maybe that's how I developed it, but just to try and create more sounds without changing sounds with effects or something.
Claro. En tu proyecto Little Barrie se nota que el tratamiento del audio y la mezcla son casi tan importantes como la canción. ¿Lo sentís así? Digamos, ¿le prestás mucha atención a crear un paisaje sonoro que complemente la obra, las canciones?
Well, yeah, we've always been very particular about how we want our records to sound, or like, specific guitar sounds or drum sounds or something, because if you change the sound, to me, it changes how the music feels. It makes a huge difference. You can play the same part, but with a different, way of recording it, or a different amplifier even, or a different guitar, it'll feel different. So I suppose production and sound has always been a really important part of what we do, because I guess you never get it perfect. You're always trying to reach something that maybe what you hear in your head, you're always trying to get close to that as possible. And maybe you never get it, and that's what keeps us carrying on, you know. But yeah, it's really important. Sound has always been important to me. I started to notice the difference when I was younger with certain records I liked, to watching live film of bands, you know. I got interested in the sound of old amplifiers by watching film clips from the 60s or 70s, and I noticed that the amplifiers were different, or you looked at a picture of a recording studio and the equipment was different, or, you know, but sometimes you have to find the equipment that's right for you. It's not always the same as what your heroes are using or something, you know. And it takes a while. Sometimes you have to get it wrong to get it right, I think. You know.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It sounds pretty analog and vintage, and I guess I wanted to ask you, do you record straight into a computer and then you put things through tape? Because it sounds like tape.
We've done a mixture of things over the years, really. Our first recordings were pretty much all analog because we were going to studios that were still using tape. Our more recent recordings, things have been recorded onto computer, but maybe we've used a more simple or old school technique to record. But a lot of our recent recordings are recorded onto computer, but then sometimes we've used tape later on. Like after we've mixed the album, sometimes we put it onto tape and taken tape to master it, things like that. We've done that before. But each album seems to be a slightly different process, really. We tend to record fairly simply, quite a simple recording setup, really. But sometimes you just have to work with what you have. Sometimes we've had sessions where we've been in a studio where there's more options or more expensive equipment. And sometimes we've recorded things with quite basic, cheap equipment as well. Sometimes you just have to work with what you have, you know.
And you record everything at the same time with the drums and the bass, or do you track separately? Or
most of it. I mean, I like to try and record ideally at least me doing a basic guitar, bass and drums together, because then you feel like you have the performance of the three of you playing together. Even if I replace the guitar later, at least we've got that energy of playing together. I think that's really important for us as a band, because we enjoy it more when we do that. You know, that works for us. But quite often I might replace guitars or I'll do overdubs after, or I'll do the vocal after. But to start with playing together is the best. It's the most fun, I think.
With a click or without a click?
Generally no click.
No click. Okay.
We have done some things to click. When I'm doing sessions for other people, that's nearly always to click. But for our own records, we kind of felt like it was holding us back a bit. And if our songs speed up a little bit, if it feels right, it doesn't matter to us, you know. Because a lot of the records we love, there's no click anyway. So if things speed up or slow down, or as long as it doesn't feel like it's having a negative effect on the music, it's all right, you know. Because sometimes things need to speed up if they feel more intense, or maybe need to slow down if you want to draw people in a bit or break it down. It's a bit like speech, really. You don't always talk at the same speed or whatever. So I don't think music necessarily has to be.
Hablando de grabar, vamos a entrar al capítulo, no sé cómo perdón por mi inglés, pero Better Call Saul.
Pablo Barrie. Interviewer, actually.
Bien, estamos todos. Te escuché decir que la cortina de para mí la mejor serie de todos los tiempos y la humanidad, Better Call Saul, la hiciste como una pieza en principio de 20 segundos y que luego te pidieron que hagas la canción entera. Necesito saber varias cosas. ¿Cómo la compusiste? La pieza original, ¿cómo se grabó? Si tenés ganas de contarnos qué usaste, el estudio.
Yeah, so we got approached, my manager Richard got an email from the music director of the series, Thomas Golovich, his name is. And he asked if we'd be interested in writing a theme for this new TV show that was a prequel to Breaking Bad and about Saul Goodman's character. The brief of what they wanted was they wanted a 20-second theme that would cut dead on 20 seconds and go to the first scene of each episode. So the original brief was we need just 20 seconds of music. And I spoke to Thomas on Skype back then. And the first question he said to me is, "Oh, so you've seen Breaking Bad, right?" And I just had to go, No, which is pretty embarrassing because I'm probably the only person in the world who hasn't seen it. And so he said, okay, no problem. He told me the story in about 2 minutes. And then he said, okay, we need this theme. And they liked one of our songs called Why Don't You Do It? It was on our second album. And they said, oh, we like this guitar sound. Would you be interested in writing something in that kind of style, but just 20 seconds long? And I spoke to him on like a Thursday evening. I said to him, he said, can you give us some different ideas, different variations? I said, how many? And he said, oh, maybe 17. He said, I went, oh. I just went, okay. I said, when do you need them? He said, Monday. And I just went, yeah, all right. And then I finished the call and I was like, oh, right, okay, Monday, right. So I spent the weekend writing little themes, and then me and Virgil, our old drummer, got together in the studio on Monday and we recorded them all as demos with a little bit of drums, a little bit of bass. We recorded them all, mixed them all because you could mix them very quickly because they were only 20 seconds long, and sent them off that night to Thomas in LA. About 1 week later, he came back and he said, they're great. Can you give me 12 more? And I was like, yeah. And I said, when do you need them? He goes, Monday again. I was like, yeah. I was like, all right, okay. And so I wrote 12 more. We did the same thing again, and then we sent them off. Composers are writing for this as well, trying to get the gig as well. So we didn't think we would get chosen, but we did. And it was the most amazing surprise, you know. We couldn't believe it, really. We found out about 5 weeks before the first episode was on AMC in America. It was quite a tight deadline, really, for them, you know.
How much did it change, or did it change at all from what you sent to what actually made it to the show?
No, they actually used our demo. Because we just thought, well, we're going to record it again, you know. So we recorded it in a little studio we used to work in North London that had a simple recording setup and a rehearsal room. So we just recorded all the ideas in there, and we just sent it off. And when I spoke to Tom, I said, do you need us to record it again? They were like, no, it's fine. And we just did our demos, you know. So it was recorded using Ableton, I think. Yeah, we did the guitar and the drums together, bass afterwards. And then, yeah, we could mix them so fast because there were only 3 instruments, no overdubs, you know, 3 instruments and 20 seconds long. So it was really fun to mix, you know, it was really easy. And not particularly any fancy recording equipment, fairly standard modern microphone, I think. You know, I used an old guitar and a good amplifier, but it was very simple equipment, really.
You have any favorite ones? Was this one your favorite one, or like?
Yeah, because there was one I thought, well, if they choose us, they'll choose this one. And they didn't, they chose a different one. And when I first heard the one they'd chosen, I was like, oh, it's kind of weird. But after a while, you get used to it. And now it feels right, you know. Yeah. But one of the other ones we turned into a song, released it on an album. Yeah. One of the reject ideas, yeah.
Es evidente que te gustan mucho los instrumentos viejos, de caja, no tan convencionales. ¿Qué tenés? ¿Sos coleccionista? ¿Tenés básicamente como para tener paleta de sonido o porque sos coleccionista?
I mean, I do like old guitars. I mean, when I started buying guitars, they were a lot cheaper than now. I think they're really expensive now. But I guess it's just because of my age that when I started getting into buying guitars in the 90s, you didn't have to be rich to buy an old guitar, you know, some of them. So it was possible. And I used to sometimes buy, and then you trade a guitar for another one and stuff. But some of my older guitars I've had for a long time. I don't really think I'm a collector because I think of myself as a player first. But yeah, I mean, the old ones are really nice. It's just a shame they're so expensive now. I think it's harder for younger musicians. It's really difficult for them to be able to afford those instruments. But there is something special about the old ones. And I like, obviously, famous companies like Gibson, Fender, Gretsch, whatever, make nice guitars. But some of the funkier ones are cool as well, you know. Say, like the less expensive names from the 50s, 60s. Some of that stuff's really cool as well, I think.
Hay muchos videos tuyos tocando solo en tus redes o en YouTube. ¿Cómo se te ocurren esas ideas? O sea, todas podrían ser una canción. Siempre que improvisás o agarrás la guitarra, tratás de crear esas pequeñas piezas musicales. Es increíble ver qué musical que son las cosas que tocas, ¿no?
I started doing those videos during the lockdown with the pandemic because there was no gigs and there was nothing we could do. So I just thought, well, maybe I could just do a couple of little bits of guitar, put it on Instagram and see if anybody is interested. And I guess I just started to make up my own little ideas and anything that I felt like playing at the time. But I composed them a little bit, I'd maybe play for an hour or something and then see what I come up with. And I think what I'd like to do is turn them into longer pieces of music, I think. But I just see if I had a guitar lying around, I would just pick that up and see, or maybe I'll do something like this today. And sometimes I'll play somebody else's song occasionally as well. Just whatever I feel like doing at the time, really. And there's been some times where I've tried to record something, I didn't think it was good enough, so I didn't put it out, But most of the time it's okay. But sometimes I do a lot of takes until it's good. I make a lot of mistakes,
Hay una búsqueda muy clara en tu audio. Me interesa saber cuáles son los elementos que considerás más importantes para formarlo. ¿Cuál es la pieza que decís estas son claves al momento de encontrar ese audio que claramente es una parte muy importante de tu estilo?
I think one really, really important part is setup that sometimes people think about second and not first is your amplifier. If you've got a good amp, you can get a good sound with a great amplifier and a cheaper guitar. If you've got a really expensive, great guitar, but the amplifier isn't very good, it won't sound as good to me anyway. So I think your amplifier is really important. Because a friend of mine said to me, your amp is half of your sound, so it's important to try and get as good an amp as you can and what's right for you. But my setup is always pretty simple. Ideally, I like to get the tone or the overdrive straight from the amplifier if I can. Turn the volume up until you get the tone that you need. But you can't always do that, especially if I'm working with other people, because they might want to be quiet on stage or something, But your amplifier is really important. And obviously your guitar. And I try and keep my setup as simple as possible. So for many years, I just played guitar, cable, amplifier, no effects, I did that for a long time. And then we started to use, a bit of like fuzz or reverb or tremolo, simple effects really. So now I have those things, But yeah, the main thing is a simple valve amplifier. My favorite amplifier is I have an old white Fender Bassman amplifier, like Brian Setzer, that kind of style, which I bought that like, I don't know, 16 years ago or something. But that's been a really important thing for me. And my favorite thing is a guitar with P90 pickups and a Bigsby tremolo is my favorite thing. I'll show you.
Oh, great.
This is my favorite guitar.
Oh.
My old 330. This is my number one guitar.
Beautiful.
Which I've had for 20 years. It wasn't expensive. I mean, it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't expensive at the time. But this is my number one guitar, really. I just think they sound great, and you can kind of do everything with this, really. It sits with blues and R&B, jazz and rock and roll, and you can do more melodic things with it, but you can do more kind of dirty sounds with it. And I don't know, it just feels right. And I like hollow body guitars as well. So that's my favorite, I think. And it has a good wang bar on it, It's got that sound, It does that thing. So that's number one.
Hermoso.
Really.
Muy bonito.
I'll show you one other thing. It's funny because I've got these because I'm going to the studio later. This is my favorite fuzz box.
Oh, me
yeah. It's a Cornell one made in the 1990s, but it has germanium transistors. Sounds really great. I've used that a lot on my own records. That's a good fuzz box. So I like that.
¿Y de slapback qué usa? ¿Qué delay usa?
I have one that's a very cheap copy of. I think it was meant to be a copy of an MXR pedal, but it was like made in Asia, and I bought it for £25. It sounds really good. But I have, sometimes in the studio, we might use tape echo if someone has one, ideally. But on stage, I tend to use this one, or sometimes I use, at the minute when I'm playing with Liam, I'm using an MXR carbon copy, I think. That's pretty good. But yeah, I don't own many pedals, really. Most of them are fuzz pedals, really.
Claro. Te veo también con muchos P90. ¿Hay algo de ese micrófono que te gusta en particular más que los demás? ¿O estoy equivocado y te gustan todos? Y usas de todo.
Yeah, that's my favorite pickup, really. I don't know, I just got into them. I used to play a lot of guitars with humbucker pickups. Like I have one Gibson with like a 345, which is great, which I used to record Better Call Saul, actually. But P90 pickup is my favorite, I think, because I think they're very expressive. You can get, they're very responsive, and it's one of the greatest rock and roll pickups, really, if you're playing with a dirty sound. But also, if you play clean, they're really, I think they bring out the character in the way I play. I just like them very much, But I didn't get a P90 guitar until I moved to London, I don't think. Not a proper one. But most of my guitars have those pickups now.
La interpretación es una parte muy fundamental de tu forma de tocar. Cuando te acercás al puente, dedos, púa, Bixby, ¿qué elementos tenés en cuenta a la hora de tocar una canción, un solo? ¿Cómo lo analizás?
I mean, sometimes when you're on stage, you're sort of lost in the music, aren't you, really? Whereas sometimes when you're recording, you're thinking more consciously about what you're trying to achieve. But I think the most important thing is to try and play with feel, really. Feeling is the most important thing, really, rather than technique or speed or anything. Making something that feels real or feels honest is the most important. But it depends what I'm playing, because if I'm on stage or something, if it's coming to a part where, sometimes you're feeling more the energy of the band, or sometimes if it's something that's difficult to play, you feel more nervous. It can vary, but I guess I'm always I think everyone's always trying to just express things as close as they can to what they want it to be, But you're still playing, you're lost in the music, you're excited by the music a lot of the time, the people you're playing with.
Al momento de practicar, esa búsqueda la analiza, o también al momento de practicar o estar con el instrumento antes. Si la idea de, por ejemplo, cambiar de púa a dedos es algo que practica y que trabaja, o que también surgió natural en su forma de tocar.
It developed over time, because there was a time when I was younger where I didn't play with my fingers at all. It was just all pick. And then gradually I started to use my fingers more. I just got interested in the sound with fingers, and there was a time years ago where I couldn't play fingerstyle guitar like picking. I had to teach myself that much later on, because I tried a few times and I was not getting it right. And then after many times trying, I felt like I turned a corner with it and it got a bit better. But that's something I've learned later. I think it's developed gradually over a long period of time. Yeah, because 20 years ago I did virtually everything with a pick, but my style has evolved. I play more with fingers. I guess it's like kind of not quite 50-50, but closer now. I think my style's definitely changed over the years quite a lot.
Qué lindo. ¿Cómo es tu trabajo con Liam? ¿Te limitas a ser un sesionista y cedes tu parte creativa? ¿O tenés espacio para proponer ideas y ser vos? ¿Te sentís particular cuando tocas esos himnos y ver a la gente llorando te afecta de otra manera que trabajar con otra gente?
I think when you're playing as a session musician, the first thing you need to, or I think about, is you need to do what's right for this band or this session. So it's important that I play the songs in a way that people want to hear them. Am I playing the parts exactly like Bonehead? Probably not, but I try and play them as close in my own way as I can. That's what because the audience need to hear those songs how they love them, I think. With some of Liam's newer material, solo material, there might be a chance to do a few different things, but I think with the Oasis tunes, I need to be there driving that rhythm as best as I can, because you have to play for the song and not for you. I think that's the important thing. But there are some songs where, over time where Liam and Mike Moore, the lead guitar player, main lead guitar player, Mike has given me a few more things to do. So would you play a bit more on this or whatever? As long as Liam is happy and Mike is happy, that's okay. But I keep it simple because I think that's what the song needs, and that's what makes the song good. Because I can be more fancy on my own records or different gig or something, you know. But with these songs, you need to. The beauty is how simple they are, and that's what makes them cool, I think. And yeah, it's amazing to get to play those songs with Liam and his band in front of lots of people, and there's a really good vibe in the band. Everyone's really cool, and they're nice people to be with. You know? It's a lot of fun.
Tocaste con Primal Scream, además de hacer tu trabajo como sesionista en esas situaciones, ¿vas incorporando data que luego vas a aplicar en tus proyectos?
You learn a lot when you're working either on tour or in the studio. You learn a lot when you work with different artists because all artists work in a different way. So you might learn about how they record, how they write, how they arrange songs. You know, you'll learn a lot really, or you'll learn from other musicians the way they're playing. So you're constantly learning, or maybe a way to, you know, which microphone you use on an amplifier. You're always learning playing with other people, and that can bring new ideas back to your own music. So I think it's quite a healthy thing to be doing a little bit of both, really.
Es destacable que tu habilidad o tu relación con la guitarra está vinculada a hacer canciones, ¿no? Como que siempre está supeditada a la canción. ¿Crees que a veces los guitarristas nos olvidamos de que ese aparato es para hacer música y nos desviamos en hacer solos e impresionar a la gente y olvidamos que tal vez ese aparato se creó para hacer música?
I think it depends on the person, but also it's personal taste from the listener as well. But I think some guitar players definitely play for the song, definitely, like whether it be Keith Richards or Johnny Marr or Muddy Waters or anyone where they're playing to support a song, to help them convey the emotion that they're trying to do. And some guitar players play more busy or play a lot, but if it works in a song, it's okay. But I think some guitar players can overplay. But then again, it depends. Some people like that. Some people like a more minimal approach. So it depends. With me, there's some very minimal guitar players that I like, you know, like, because some guitar players are minimal, but they're very, very good, like Steve Cropper. They play like economical, you know. They play only when it's needed, but when they do play, it's beautiful. And that can have more impact than someone playing 1,000 notes or something. But then again, some songs have a guitar part that's very busy and plays all the time. I'm trying to think of an example. So I think it depends on the artist, you know. Or someone like Steve Cropper, John Lee Hooker, or even Ron Asheton, the Stooges. It's very simple, but it's very powerful. And then you could have someone like, say I'm trying to think of someone in modern rock music who plays a lot, but say even as an instrumental player, you could have someone very simple like Steve Cropper, Green Onions, but then you can have Django Reinhardt, Wes Montgomery, something that's really beautiful, that's quite intricate. So it depends on the music, I think. I'm trying to think of a famous song that has a lot of guitar in it. But some Stone Roses songs have a lot of layers of guitar, or Smiths, you know, with Johnny. There's a lot of layers of guitar, but it's all right for the music. So I think that's cool, you know.
Y para terminar, ¿le gustan guitarristas que son todo lo contrario? ¿Alguno que no imaginemos que te gusta? Van Halen, no sé, ¿te gusta ese tipo de guitarristas también?
Well, I've discovered a lot of guitar players in the last few years. You know, some are people who are around now, some people from the past. I've discovered some guitar players from the past that I really like Don Rich, who played with Buck Owens, country guitar player, really fantastic. Grady Martin, who played a lot of country and rockabilly sessions, brilliant guitar player. But then, you know, I love people like, it's not just rhythm and blues or rock and roll. I like Michael Caroli from the band Can, you know. I love Tom Verlaine and Richard Lloyd from Television. Yeah, I love Django Reinhardt. I love, I'm trying to think who else, but yeah, just a mixture, you know, I like a mixture of things really, and people who play in different ways. As long as it feels soulful, it interests me really. And I'm still learning about other guitar players, like jazz guitar players like Jim Hall. I love Grant Green and Kenny Burrell, people like that. But yeah, some of the country guitar players I really like. I love Luther Perkins, played with Johnny Cash. And Carl Perkins was very good as well. But new guitar players, here's a few you should check out. Joel Patterson from Chicago. He's the best. He's one of the best at playing. He plays any American guitar style from the 1920s to the 1960s. You do country, rockabilly, western swing. He plays pedal steel as well. He's so good. He can play blues, R&B, slide guitar. I've even seen him do a ZZ Top tribute with a fake beard, and he can play all that 70s boogie as well. He can play anything. It's kind of annoying because he's so good, but he's wonderful. I like him. My favourite British guitar players is Joe Hollick, who was in a band called Wolf People. He's got an interesting mix of like 60s Peter Green era Fleetwood Mac crossed with the folk thing, like Bert Jansch, David Graham, early Richard Thompson. He's got this. I've worked with Joe a few times. We did a Danny Kirwan tribute gig together. He's amazing. James Walburn, he's in a band called His Lordship. He also plays with the Pretenders. He's a killer kind of punky rockabilly, high energy rockabilly influenced guitar player. He's excellent. In America, Tom Brennick, Budos Band, Charles Bradley, Daptone. Amazing R&B guitarist. Beautiful. There's so many really, but there's a few you could check out.
Infinitas gracias. Okay.
It's right because it's raining outside, so I don't want to go out. So,
Okay.
I'm going to wait for it to stop. But,
Okay.
Siempre
James.
llueve ahí, ¿no? Igual. No creo que sea una sorpresa que llueva en Londres.
yeah, it's actually, the weather's been pretty good the last few months. It's just this week it's been raining a little bit more. But so it's a bit more like, yeah, it's raining right now, but I'm hoping it's going to stop before I go to the studio. So fingers crossed, but you never know. But I hope to get to Argentina again sometime. I'd love to get there with Little Barrie if I could. That would be amazing.
Hermoso, sí, claro.
Because actually, I met a guitar player from Buenos Aires actually when I was there with Liam. A guy called Julio. He's a fantastic guitarist. Yeah,
Julio.
He makes music with his girlfriend Flo, and she's a singer.
Wow.
And he's a really great guitar player. He plays good. He plays like a harmony guitar a lot. He has a great sound, and he knows Tom Brennick, the guitar player that I mentioned. They know each other.
Wow.
He's a great musician. They're really cool people. So
Qué lindo.
yeah, he's a great player.
Bueno, investigaremos. Gracias.
James,
Thank
bye.
you very much.
Yeah, take care, guys.
Bye.